Hey everyone, it's Craig Lewin from Beyond the Breakers, and today we have a very exciting interview. So most swimmers train their lungs, their technique, and their endurance. Almost none of them train what holds all of it together, especially as they get older. Dan Daly spent most of his life in the water and 20 years helping athletes figure out what they're missing. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist and the founder of Train Daily in New York. And he's back for year three, Beyond the Breakers. This year's topic might be the most important one he's brought to the stage yet. So let's dive in. And welcome. We're stoked to talk to you. Always have a great time talking to Dan about all things swimming. So welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Craig. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So let's dive into it. I know I like to do this all the wasn't on our little list of questions to get us started, but in 30 seconds, give us the elevator pitch on Dan Daly.
Wow, putting me on the spot.
Yeah, I know, that's how I like to roll.
I'm a performance coach. I'm based in New York City, but I coach people all over the world. My niche is strength training for swimmers. I'm a swimmer. I'm a strength coach. I'm doing both. I'm coaching people towards both of those things. Everything from in the pool, 50 meters, 20 seconds to around Manhattan, 45 kilometers, English Channel, Triple Crown. So really capturing a lot of people, helping them be smarter about strength training as it applies to what they're trying to achieve in the water.
Amazing. And you own Train Daily based in New York, correct?
I do. That's my coaching brand, Train Daily, my namesake, training every day with Dan Daly.
Awesome. And that's what traindaily.com?
TrainDaily.com,
Excellent.
DALY.
Excellent. So if you're looking for strength conditioning coaching, there you go, traindaily.com. So diving into it, you kind of covered basically all things pool and open water. You've been swimming most of your life, Division One swimmer. Now obviously you're a master's athlete. I'd say you're still incredibly fast based on the numbers I've seen, and you've transitioned to pool and open water and some marathon swim events. So curious, like at what point did you realize you wanted to train for both pool sprints and open water marathon swims?
I've been talking about this a lot more lately because open water is becoming more popular, and now we're seeing it with USA Swimming. So I'm having a lot more high school athletes. Just had a bunch of swimmers go to Jersey and perform in like the 1.25, 2.5, and 5K. When I was in high school, there was one open water event in my local town in like this dam section of the river, and the dam ended up, I never got to do it. Then the dam broke, and then they couldn't do it anymore because I guess the water wasn't deep enough in the Schuylkill River in Philly, well,
Okay.
closer to Philly. So I never did any open water swimming. And in college, we would go on winter training trips somewhere warm with an ocean, and we would swim in the ocean every day in between workouts and maybe like do one beach workout the whole 2 weeks. And that was the extent of like my open water swimming. But I was a sprinter, high school and college, and I couldn't even fathom doing a mile swim or a 5K or a 10K. I was put in the 500 once in a dual meet, and I probably went out in like 49 seconds and then held sub minutes for the other four. I had no idea how to pace it. Um, and I recall being like sub five at practice sometimes for like 500 repeats. But um, I got into open water swimming after college. Took a little bit of a break. I was kind of burnt out on swimming. I got into strength training. And then I started dabbling in triathlon. I did a couple of like indoor tries. I did the Escape from Alcatraz try, which was my first like big open water swim, which I think we talked about on another call, which is kind of like a funny story about that experience. But then my uncle asked me if my wife and I wanted to do an English Channel relay in like 2010 or 11, and we immediately said yes. And then we felt like we were in like, I don't know, I don't think we realized what the commitment was going to be or like how cold the water was going to be. I ended up coaching my uncle for that. He ultimately went on to get the Triple Crown. We participated in a bunch of shorter swims leading up to it. So I did like my first 10K in the Hudson River. It was current assisted, so maybe 90-minute swim. And I just started getting more involved in that and kind of helping him on his journey towards the Triple Crown and doing some shorter events. And I realized it was a lot of fun. It was a different way to train. It got me out of the pool a little bit. It gave me a new challenge. And it just seems like a lot of middle-aged, post-college adults and athletes take on these like marathons and triathlons and open water swimming for me because I'm comfortable in the water. So just opened up this whole other world to me of like what swimming, of what you could do in the swim world.
That's amazing. So coming from a sprint background, like what were the elements or learnings you had from your sprint background that carried over either carried over well or gave you an advantage when you started bumping up the distance?
Well, we did a lot of volume. I think still swim teams are doing a lot of volume. So I was doing 6 to 10K workouts. We would do a 10K annually in college on training trip. I was a sprinter, but I also really like to train, and I always talk about how like I wanted to be the fittest person on the team, which I think ultimately hurt me from being the fastest. But I loved training, I loved practice, I loved being fit, and I would often train like with the middle distance swimmers, even though I was also doing the 50. So I think I was well suited in terms of technique, the volume tolerance, the ability to work. And at first, it's like, can you just like finish the swim? So the like, which is the goal for a lot of people. It's like I want to swim across the channel. I just want to get from A to B. So first and foremost, it's like distance tolerance and just being able to tolerance the distance or the duration. And that seemed like an easy task for me. It's like, yeah, I've done 10K in a practice. I could do 10K in this river. So it didn't seem that challenging. Where it gets more challenging is like, can you sustain this pace? Like ultimately, I am a sprinter. I can sustain relatively fast open water paces, but I'm not keeping up with like the best distance swimmers.
Makes sense. I don't think many people are. I think the when you look at the top in the sport, they are freaks of nature holding minute 110 per 100 in the open water. The rest of us are like, yeah, like if you're 125, 130, 135 for those 10, 11, 12 hour swims, you're in a really good position. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, some teams. I remember, yeah, growing up we did volume. It made the transition pretty easy, regardless you sprint or distance. I think when you get to college, you start specializing more. There is some differences that happen depending on your coach, but yeah, the open water's been. I think you had mentioned more middle-aged people taking on these bigger challenges. I think it's a way for us, like at least for me, a way for me to do a sport I love, but not compare myself to the swimmer I used to be. Because I'm never going to go the times I went in college as like a 40-year-old guy. But but I can still do really cool things in the sport that I didn't, that still make you feel good. And yeah, looking back, maybe 20-year-old me couldn't do. So it kind of still makes you feel good, like you're doing something really, really special and incredible in the sport. So if we transition, so that's the swim background on you. At some point, strength and conditioning gets added in and becomes more of what you focus on. So what was that? What was the impetus for that? What was that transition like?
So I swam Division One and Division Two. I started out at Fordham. I swam there for 2 years, and halfway through college, I decided that I wanted strength training was always a huge asset for me. Started lifting in 8th grade. It was a literal and figurative strength of mine in high school. Transferred that into college, and a lot of my teammates saw me as a resource for that person who was very strong in the gym, was strong in the water, was connecting the two, and I realized I wanted to study that. So I transferred to Westchester University. I got a degree in kinesiology. So basically studying exercise science and strength training. And I just wanted to change. I wanted to break from swimming. So I really leaned into the strength and conditioning world. I was working with a soccer team, a lacrosse team. I was working with hockey players. I was basically a strength and conditioning coach for a variety of teams and athletes. Thought maybe I would want to be a strength and conditioning coach for swimming, but I got into the personal training world. But I like right away was coaching all these endurance athletes, marathoners, triathletes, started to coach even more swimmers. And then 5, 10 years into my career, really just started leaning only into coaching swimmers with strength training, but they also needed a lot of help in the water, and I was able to do that as well. So as like a personal trainer or strength coach, being able to meet people where they are and like what they need. Does someone need more pool work and technique work? The answer is probably everybody, because the most specific way to get better at swimming is to swim. But then a lot of these individuals weren't lifting at all. They weren't, there were some muscular imbalances. There was a lack of mobility. There was repetitive stresses from the water that they could be working on those things on land to reduce their risk for injury and improve their performance. And now we're kind of able to tackle this from like two angles and be even more successful or more competitive relative to whatever that person's goal was.
Nice. So I'm assuming that's, you take that on, building that connection between strength and conditioning, swimming to kind of give athletes more well-rounded training regime, I suppose. So when you look at, the clients you work with now, both obviously age, background, everything, gets taken into account. For someone who's actually never done any dry land in their life or minimal dry land, what's one common issue, or what's one thing you wish they understood, and like why does that matter so much?
I think everyone thinks that dryland training looks like bodybuilding, and they're going to add all this muscle mass, and they're going to get bulky. They're going to be sore. They're going to lose their mobility, and it's going to decrease their swimming performance. And a lot of it is because they don't understand strength training and they don't know what the entry point is. And so they might start and they're probably mostly derailed by like soreness, which they also kind of link to an immobility, which is temporary, and a temporary decrease in performance in the water or how they feel in the water. And they don't give it a chance. So there's an entry point for people to be smarter about that. Be smart about the volume of the strength training. It's complementary to what you're trying to do in the water. There might be a temporary decrease in fitness, which you'd also experience if you increased your volume in the pool. But when you can adapt and get beyond that initial adaptation, you're going to start to feel stronger in the water. You're going to start to feel more resilient, more force. You're going to notice it in your pacing. You might notice improvements in your physique and body composition, but it doesn't have to come with bulk. And even if it did come with some bulk, that bulk doesn't have to make you like immobile, heavy, and sluggish. So I just think there's people misunderstand what strength training is, and there's a smart way to begin that and have it complement your swimming in a really powerful way that can make you a better swimmer.
And does that differ like between females and males? Like, everyone's body is different, but then you add in additional differences between, the different genders. So how does your thoughts change depending on gender, if at all?
So for a while, we thought humans were humans. We train everybody the same. There are a lot of principles that apply to males and females, and like, the good news is a lot of the basics are going to apply to everybody to start. Increasingly, there's a lot more evidence on the benefits of strength training for females, particularly middle-aged and aging females. And yes, we want to take those some of those considerations. We want to think about some of those things as it applies to women, but a lot of the same principles are going to apply too. The big thing is like getting started, and then there's some nuances you could begin to think about, whether you're male or female, and some of the outcomes that you're trying to achieve with your strength training.
And is there like a common mistake that you just see over and over, specifically within swimmers when they start adding strength training in on their own?
Well, it's kind of the things that we started the question with is they're doing way too much volume. They're training body parts instead of movements. They're sore. They attribute that soreness to a lack of mobility. They attribute the soreness and the lack of mobility to a decrease in performance, and then they kind of bail on the plan. Or it's always this like start and stop of like it's going to be a step backwards first to go two steps forward. But if it's always one step back and then just stop, you just feel like it's not helping at all. You need to give it a chance. You need to know what the minimum effective dose is, and um, you need to understand some of the things that are going to happen when you initiate that. Yes, you might be a little sore. Yes, you might be a little more tired. But if you give it a shot for 1 to 3 months, you're going to begin to adapt, and you're going to see positive improvements in the water that you could directly link to what you're doing in the gym.
Yeah, I think I've been a victim of that throughout my career as well. Just try to do it in your own because you think you know something and it's not sustainable. So, and then I started working with a strength conditioning coach, and it was far more sustainable while I was training, and better understanding of why certain things are happening and why you need and how do you adjust your plan accordingly. So I think we all fall into that trap at some point. And I think one thing that's really unique about you is that, you're both a strength and conditioning expert, I'd say, and say an expert swimmer and coach. And there's not many people in the sport who are, both strength and conditioning specialists and experienced swimmers and coaches. So how does having a background in both of those things change the way you coach? Or what makes that different than other coaches out there that might be following a more traditional route?
I think it makes it more powerful. I really value that I have both and I can speak to both sides. I I make a generalization, but I just feel like swim coaches who don't strength train or don't have a background in it don't understand strength training. They're perpetuating some of these myths. In the sprint world, I'm seeing some smart strength coaches who also have a sprinting background, and sprint is relative. I would almost say I'm seeing more pool co swim coaches who also have a strength and conditioning background, and they're marrying the two, and that's really cool to see. I think we're seeing a really neat shift. We're on the cusp of it. In the open water community, I don't want to slight anyone who might be listening to this call, but I can't think of anyone in the open water community who's a strength and conditioning coach and also has experience in open water swimming. I don't know if you can. Off the top of my head, I was thinking about it before the call. I can think of tons of pool coaches who are doing both, and that's really neat. In the open water world, it's smaller and more niche. Um, and a lot of the same principles apply to both, but open water swimmers could be a lot smarter. The whole endurance community period could be a lot smarter about strength conditioning. And we're not seeing as well in maybe in the other sports, I don't know, but I just don't see a lot of strength coaches in open water swimming who also have swimming and open water experience.
I would agree with that. That's why we have you come back every year to Beyond the Breakers. You're the
Yeah.
guy. So let's transition into Beyond the Breakers. I think that worked real smoothly. So you were a speaker for our first year. You were a speaker last year. You're coming back for year three. Other than me asking, what else keeps bringing you back to Beyond the Breakers?
Well, I love this community. I want to be a part of it. I want to see it grow. I want to see your event grow. There's a real need for this event, and I want to be a part of things like that as the community continues to grow. So it's something I look forward to every year. I get to see a lot of friends, clients, coaches from all over the world. I get to meet new people. It's great for my career. It's great for my own personal goals of participating more in these events and learning from the other speakers. Um, it's fun. I'm glad it's going well. I'm glad it's growing. I'm glad you're doing it again, and I'm happy to be a part of it every year.
Amazing. So did you have expectations going into year one? And what were your thoughts year one compared to year two? Obviously we have year three coming up and we're doing even bigger and different. So curious like what your expectations were going in and what you actually experienced.
Um, I guess I was trying to like learn my audience in year one and like in the strength and conditioning community, it's very evidence-based, at least like on the national strength and conditioning side. And you get a lot of people challenging ideas, challenging an anecdote. You have the anecdotal or like coaches in the trenches crowd, you have the evidence-based crowd, and just a lot of maybe a lot some arguing and certainly some debate. And I found like the open water community was very open to like new ideas. When I went into year one, I wanted to be very evidence-based and I wanted to demonstrate the evidence for why strength training could be beneficial for that sport. And I think that was well received. So it was year one was a lot about like the what and the why and kind of trying to create an argument to get people more involved in strength training to support their open water goals. And I found the community was open to that.
No, amazing. Yeah, then you came back year two and you got people out of their seats. We did land work that translates. So obviously you took notes from year one, transitioned to year two to make it even better for what people wanted. And it was probably one of the one of the sessions that was rated quite highly. People liked being up and actually, trying the different mobility movements, strength training movements. So, what were some of the things that you did learn, about the community outside of them being open, standing on the stage? How did that change your mindset around open water swimming and the open water swimming community more generally?
Well, people learn by doing, and the best workshops I've attended have always been very practical. So I wanted to make this practical as well. It's like I didn't want to just talk about like what they could do. I wanted to show them. So that was fun, and I'm glad it was well received. And even as a lecturer, I don't want to get up there and be like talking the whole time. So it's kind of spread it out, get people involved, make it more interactive. So that was a lot of fun. As I begin to learn like more about the audience, particularly attending this conference, is it's an older population taking on these challenges, and I want strength training to be something that's very accessible to everybody and let everyone know, no matter where you're at, that there's an entry point for you. And I think sometimes maybe looking at my background or how I train, my content can look very performance based, but there's an entry point for everyone. And maybe I'm jumping ahead because we talked about some of the things we chat about on this call, but like I had someone come up to me and be like, I can't do these things that you're asking me to that we're demonstrating, particularly as we got into more of like the active, I think we were like squatting and doing jumps.
Mhm.
And the lecture was over and we only had a few minutes to discuss, but I was trying to encourage her to find like a version of that that she could participate in. And a theme for this year, for next year, will actually be talking about how this is all on a spectrum. And while you might see me like jumping across the floor, like swinging a huge kettlebell, that same version could be the 70-year-old person who wants to finish their triple crown, who's doing like glute bridges on their back and core work, and how that's a very similar movement to what I'm doing, but maybe this is the dose that I need, and that's the dose that that person needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you talked about it. I think I was in both of your talks the past 2 years, and I think one thing you've said is doing something's better than doing nothing when it comes to land work. So getting out there, finding the variations that work. I wonder, can you go into a little bit more detail about your talk, the missing piece? I think that's what we're calling it this year, the missing piece. Why swimmers need strength, power, and muscle as they age. So curious if you can just give us a few more details. Why you're excited about this topic, why it's important, and what you're going to touch on.
I mean, I'd like to meet the audience where they're at and discuss a lot of progressions and regressions and how everyone can benefit from strength training, why it's important to maintain muscle mass, strength, and power as we age. Whether you're a 40-year-old who's like, oh, I'm too old to race that 10K anymore, or you're a 70-year-old who's going to do the English Channel and just wants to finish, but doesn't want their shoulders to give up on them halfway across, or doesn't want to lose a lot of muscle mass and have their body composition change throughout that process, and they want to feel good and feel resilient and be able to take on some of these challenges. So performance is relative for all ages, and performance is relative in the gym as well. And I want to help people find the entry point for what performance means to them, and how something as simple as a glute bridge could be great glute work for that 70-year-old doing the channel, and swinging a kettlebell might be the answer to help that 40-year-old feel a little more youthful and athletic to race a 10K.
Amazing. So last two questions. The first one we'll start with. So for your talk, with your experience of Beyond the Breakers, for people who are watching out there now, like who would you say needs to be in the room in November? Who 100% should be at Beyond the Breakers this year?
Everybody, everyone doing an open water swim, but particularly those who are not strength training, don't know where to start, think that it's not for them, think it's overwhelming. I want to make it simple, minimum effective dose, find that entry point. Let's make it work for you. There's a lot of ways to be successful. Adding it is only going to enhance everyone's plan. So if you're not on something, if you're not on a plan, let's get you on a plan. And if you are on a plan and you want to enhance that, we're going to talk about that as well.
Awesome. And last question, what or who are you most excited about seeing, learning about at our event this year?
Oh man, I'd actually need to like review the agenda again. I In a way it's very far off. I'm gonna start like tuning in more in the fall.
Yeah.
Um, I feel on the spot now. I guess I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that a little more.
Yeah,
Everybody.
we get some new people, new faces. We have Jennifer Brunelli coming, talking about nutrition. Alex Ewert doing physical therapy for swimming. We got Rowdy Gaines as our keynote. We have a really cool closing with Sarah Thomas and Elaine doing. We're still coming up with a name, but it's going to be awesome, and it's about being the first, like what it takes to be the first to do something. Laurie Cragen coming back, talking about mental strength strategies. So I think we have some new topics, some new faces, but also people, like you coming back for a third year in a row, just continuing to spread the knowledge that we don't get to every single year.
I mean, that's a star-studded lineup, and every year, particularly when there's two people speaking at the same time, it's tough to make a decision. But maybe get to see some people that I haven't seen speak before for those coming back, and certainly like some of those top presentations, I'm going to be front and center. So I'm looking forward to it all.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Dan. We appreciate your time. We're really stoked to have you on board. So we look forward to seeing you in November. Stan Daly practices what he preaches, both in the water and on land, and has the results that speak for themselves. So we're stoked to have him back for Beyond the Breakers Year 3. His session this November is called The Missing Piece. If you swim at any age, at any level, there's something in that room for you. So we'll see you November 14th. Get your tickets at swimbeyondthebreakers.com. So Dan, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig. See everybody in November.